in France, but as well as in England, in the field of sport generally, for his defeat against Dempsey in 1921, for the heavyweight championship. The country is also known in England for its victories against Bombardier Wells in 1913. As you can see, we've got a lot of boxing titles. He was a very good champion, very famous champion. So his trajectory looks like a fairy tale coming from a family of workers. He became a millionaire and was welcomed by many bourgeois and aristocrats. He was also a military hero. He's got many medals at the Battle of Douaumont in 1915, 1916 as well. And he was also, last but not least, he tried to be an actor and met a lot of American and French stars. But we can admit that they were not a very big success. He wrote several biographies and books, and the books we are interested in is My Méthode ou la boxe scientifique in 1914, published in 1914. Several questions raised when I read this book. Did it invent a new kind of boxing comparatively to the English and American method? Is this method he proposed really scientific? Where does the science of boxing come from, or at least the reference to the term? Which are the meaning of science used in this book? In this section, we are wondering if Georges Carpentier is a French hero or a hero who became English. La Belle Époque is a welcoming land for black American boxers, and some say that Paris was the capital of boxing. At least at the eve of the First World War, boxing became a real international sport. Carpentier started his English career on October 23rd in 1911. He got the European Championship title against young Joseph. The latter, who is the England champion, is KO at the 10th round. It was a true triumph before 12,000 fans. Despite the fact that he was the first non-Anglophone awarded in international boxing. He also met batsman Dick Wright, and won in 2 rounds of KO. But the best is coming. Georges Carpentier meets Bombardier Billy Wells in Gand, Belgium, in the 1st of June 1913. There is a big difference that you can see between the two, the French and the Britannic. The Britannic is British Empire champion and has defended his title 14 times. He's got in 1911 the Lonsdale belt for the heavyweight championship. Apparently, there is no good chance for the young Froggy. But the fight lasts only 4 rounds. As the first, Carpentier goes to the canvas for 9 seconds, but he recovers, and at the 4th, going under the guards, he knocks out Wells and punching him to the body in infighting style, English infighting style. For the rematch is planned for the early December 1914 at the Temple of Boxing International Sporting Club. In 73 seconds, using the same tactics of infighting for his first fight, Carpentier wins by KO. As you can see, I quote, the audience was momentarily spellbound in the dramatic conclusion of the fight, and then given an ovation to Carpentier and both Wells. Later, hearing with some difficulty and declared that he had done his best. Is Carpentier a son of England? It seems to be the case when, on July 1914, he meets Edgar Smith for the dubious white heavyweight championship of the world. He is welcomed like a hero. at Charing Cross station. Thousands of fans surround the carriage where he is where he's sitting and draws by white horses. That, I quote, that evening I really had the impression that I was as much British as French champion. Legends say that some fans would have harnessed the horses and would have drawn the carriage by themselves. The Carpentier change, and you can see on the picture, the presentation in French paper, like Napoleon. I'm sure that you will recognize it. You could recognize it. Sorry, because the next. I missed one picture, but no. Okay. Did Carpentier change the mentality of the two nations? I'll let you read the quotation from Christopher Rivers, who is an American scholar in French literature. He wrote a pretty good article on the subject, and I agree with him when he said, through a spectator athletic performances over the course of just a few years, he single-handedly brought about, in both the French and English-speaking worlds, a significant revision of the popular perception of Frenchness. But what is Frenchness perception? No contest, Judge Carpentier was a real tough guy, but he was also a real good boxer. Was it due to his method? Does the French boxing method exist, and is this one scientific? The book written by Georges Carpentier on his scientific method of training has some particularities. First, it was written directly in English by Lordman Luca in supposedly at the end of 1913 or at the beginning of 1914. Then, after that, it was translated into French in 1914 by Henri Dispont. He got at least 3 editions in English and 2 in French. Moreover, it was translated in German and in 1922 and in Dutch as well. We know a few about these 2 translators. Lordman Luca was both French and English and ran the magazine called in France, Sporting, for 5 years. He dealt with boxing more than any other sports. Henri Dispont was a writer and journalist, and he edited several books in literature. The content is very poor. If you give a quick look at the book, it's not very important, only 91 pages, and the contents are the following. It deals with psychology of boxers, scientific boxing, techniques of attack and defense, techniques used in Wells fight and training. This book is not really a novelty, new in the world of the boxing. We can point out the tour de valse that Georges Carpentier has invented and consists in feint, sidestep and uppercut. But as a matter of fact, this kind of blow existed in techniques in the 19th century in sidestep, in the book written by Donnelly, or the clinch and in-fight has been also invented at the end of the 19th century. Nevertheless, for Carpentier, French boxing style is totally different from the 2 other schools of boxing. The English method is scientific, and the American one is the most aggressive and brutal. Concerning the French method, it took the best from the 2 previous methods to make an homogeneous one, say. For the author, no doubt, the French method will impose its supremacy. Moreover, for Georges Carpentier, this method epitomizes the national style. He points out the specificity of the method, which is not static and can evolve, and I quote, according to the circumstances, which means with the progress and the development of the noble art in France. In saying so, French Carpentier's method is characterized by its flexibility and adaptability. It moves between 2 limits. It's a kind of average method when Carpentier says that we have searched, I quote, we have searched for, in France, to establish the method of the middle line. It's more a process than a steady state. In fact, the method refers to a psychology of the boxer. The boxer must adapt himself to the opponent's style, and for that, he has to observe him very carefully. probably the skill that Carpentier has developed with his famous coach Francois. You can see on the picture, when he used to do some tricks of magnetism at the very start of his career in a circus tour. And no doubt, for all these reasons, Carpentier can affirm what I consider a scientific method of training for fighting. But what means scientific? I could point out three meanings in this book. The first, consider science as pugilistic techniques. And I quote, science is not the art of punching with beautiful lefts and rights with a fantasy moving of legs, but it consists in using some efficient means for winning the victory without considering if that way of boxing is nice or eccentric. Yet that the marvelous stance, I didn't know how to translate l'allure in French, marvelous Loudcher or something like that, or the style has nothing to do with the real value of boxing, of course. According to Vigor's work and mine, this distinction corresponds to a modern interpretation of body techniques according to muscle moves. In one hand, the gesture in itself, and we have in the other hand the efficiency, but the two meanings are not so very well understood, usually in the sport literature, especially at the beginning of the 20th century. And so I could highlight some confusion with the two terms when I read the very well known French paper called Loudcher. The second meaning I pointed out is about training and coaching. For Carpentier, the term of science has a rational meaning. He highlights the rationality of the method when he writes, "There's nothing small that I can do which has no reason to exist." He pays attention in a very careful way to his preparation, which is quite repetitive. He walks in the morning with some races, he does sparring in avoiding the duration of the match, he practices natural method as well as Swedish method, gymnastics, and indeed he follows a regime with wine, water, no smoking, red beef and so on, which is very quite similar to Simon Heath's lecture in his tennis coaching. But there is nothing original. His training is quite the same for the English boxer as in the 19th century, and even for the training method in France at that time for every sport, more or less every sport. And we can see the footing doing by Burns. You can see the costume of training and the footing, special costume. And the third meaning, science is quite more original. It is the first French boxing book to refer to training as an experimental scientific method, perhaps in general sport. Look at the following quotation. We said that the shadow boxing have the utility to experiment a new blow or a new theory. It's quite close to an experimental method. During his footing, he has an idea that he tried immediately to transform in action. Often I can see a quote, all of a sudden, a new way to give a blow or to parry one, and without waiting, I check the theory with its application. Moreover, it refers directly to this scientific approach. It's, I quote, is what the scientists call, I believe, the experimental method, page 38. And finally, when he comes back to the camps, he pushed further his idea, and then once I came back to the gym, I quote, I repeat one after one each of my findings, and I adapt definitely the scenario discovered of the grand road to the reality of the ring combat. His approach seems to be very close to the ones arrived by Claude Bernard in 1865 in his biological method. But indeed, Carpentier didn't do some strict scientific experiences leading to some mathematical laws. Like at the same time, Etienne Jules Marais and Georges Denis do in the first biomechanics laboratory in the world in Paris. Nevertheless, there are some strange echoes that with the approach of Carpentier. So, in conclusion, what I wanted to stress was the reference to science in Carpentier's book to better understand his success in boxing and, moreover, his adoption by the English. Indeed, the study of the book cannot explain everything: international tension, the threat of war, also some reason to push the country closer. But also the kind of character of Carpentier, always available and charming person, is another reason for changing the representation of Frenchness by the English. Frenchies were supposed not only be precious, but perhaps a little bit snobbish, no? But boxing still stays the main reason of success. And the preparation of this training, referring to science, I try to stress the preparation of this training referring to science. This meaning have been three meanings have been pointed out: science as logistics, techniques, pragmatics, and experimental method. It is clear that Carpentier didn't make some distinction between them. And it's maybe the reason why his heritage in terms of boxing was not so terrific. But there's no doubt that he transferred some interesting things in the field of training, boxing training, and perhaps in other sports in France. If we must characterize this method, we would say that it is an adaptive and eclectic one. But it is a reference to an experimental science which can see as a very new one. I try to point out the difference which a pragmatic approach in coaching at that time. In case, I have to compare, of course, with the English version of the book. Finally, this reference to the experimental is quite bizarre. Where does this reference to kind of science come from? I have two ideas. One of idea concerned Marcel Carpentier's coach, very well-known Francois. Effectively, he was an instructor at Joinville in 1894, and supposedly he has to receive some lesson from Georges Denis, who has developed the scientific research in the laboratory of biomechanics at the same time. And the second idea is related to Manitou. Manitou was the first training camp in France, located in the Normandy, 100 kilometers far from Paris. In this camp, Carpentier met a very famous French champion of track and field called Jean Bouin. He could have been perhaps influenced by him. And maybe in the next symposium, I will give you the result of my research. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-François.